Join us on Patreon and become part of our journey to uncover history's untold stories. Your support helps us create in-depth content, bring hidden narratives to life, and keep history alive for everyone.
It begins with whispers in the wind, ancient voices scattered across time, carried through chains, blood, and silence. It begins in Jerusalem, but the trail doesn't end there. It leads to slave ships, to cotton fields, to plantation hymns. It leads to the Mississippi River and the cries of a people who knew they had come from something far greater than what the world told them they were. Long before American flags waved over the soil, long before the concept of black identity was filtered through centuries of colonization and distortion, there were those who believed, quietly, defiantly, that they were descendants of a royal lineage, the tribe of Judah. This belief was not born from fantasy. It was born from ancient history, suppressed archaeology, and the deliberate erasure of identity by colonial empires afraid of what a liberated people might remember. To uncover this truth is not merely to study maps and scriptures. It is to peel back layers of lies that have been cemented over centuries. Because hidden beneath the story of the transatlantic slave trade is a narrative so explosive, so threatening to the global order, that entire institutions work to bury it. But now that burial ground is shaking. The tribe of Judah, central among the 12 tribes of Israel, has always held a special role. It is from Judah that King David emerged. It is from Judah that Solomon ruled. And it is from Judah, according to both Jewish and Christian prophecy, that the Messiah would come. But what happens when that tribe, that bloodline, is no longer in Judea? What happens when that royalty is displaced, scattered, and hidden among people who were later enslaved? We must go back to 70 CE. The Roman siege of Jerusalem decimated the city, destroying the Second Temple and sending hundreds of thousands of Jews fleeing into exile. Many were taken to Europe, but a large number fled southward, into Egypt, Sudan, and deeper into Africa. This is not myth. The historian Flavius Josephus, who lived during the time of the siege, described how Jews escaped by the tens of thousands into North Africa. Scholars like Dr. Rudolf Windsor, author of From Babylon to Timbuktu, argue that many Hebrews eventually made their way into West Africa. And there, over centuries, they built kingdoms, communities, and cultural fortresses that preserved their faith. By the time European colonialists and Arab slave traders arrived in West Africa in the 1400s and 1500s, they encountered advanced civilizations: the Ashanti, the Igbo, the Yoruba, the Songhai, the Mali. Many of these communities, especially the Igbo, held customs eerily similar to ancient Hebrew practices. They observed dietary laws. They practiced circumcision on the 8th day. They upheld strict moral codes, monotheistic belief systems, and bloodline inheritance. Colonial missionaries, confused by these similarities, often labeled these tribes as Judaized Africans, though few bothered to ask why or how this resemblance came to be. There are Jewish rabbis today, such as those involved with the organization colonial, who recognize the Igbo people of Nigeria as likely descendants of the tribe of Gad or Judah. The late Rabbi Yehoshua ben Ephraim of Israel even stated that the Igbo are of the children of Israel, citing centuries of oral tradition and tribal memory. But it wasn't just the Igbo. Many enslaved Africans brought to the Americas were taken from regions of West Africa where these lost Hebrew communities had settled. The transatlantic slave trade did not just rip Africans from their land. It severed Hebrews from their Torah, prophets from their scrolls. Enslavers knew what they were doing. Colonial records show that European traders often preferred slaves from certain regions because they were stronger and more obedient, but rarely did they mention that many of them were also literate, had rich theological traditions, and knew the stories of Moses, David, and Yahweh before ever setting foot on Western soil. The Portuguese and Spanish Inquisitions played a critical role in this erasure. Crypto-Jews, Hebrews who secretly practiced Judaism while outwardly appearing Christian, were persecuted relentlessly in Europe and Latin America. Many of them fled to West Africa, joining already established Jewish communities. Some were later captured in slave raids, branded as heathens, and shipped to the Americas. In Brazil, Suriname, Jamaica, and the American South, Enslaved Africans carried Hebrew names and whispered forbidden prayers at night. These practices were punished with lashings and death. Why? Because memory is powerful. Because knowing who you are is dangerous. In North America, the erasure became more scientific. The development of race theory in the 18th and 19th centuries was not just about color, it was about history. If Black Americans were to be seen as less than human, it had to be ensured that they never knew they had royal blood, that they were never told they might be the descendants of Judah, the line of kings. So the Bible was edited. The Slave Bible, printed in the early 1800s, removed more than 90% of the Old Testament and nearly 50% of the New. Passages about Moses leading his people to freedom were deliberately omitted. Why? Because they sounded too familiar. Because if enslaved people heard that they, too, were Hebrews in bondage, they might rise. But rise they did. From Nat Turner, who saw himself as a modern-day Moses, to the spirituals that cried, "Go down, Moses," Black American history is laced with a coded remembrance. The Gullah Geechee people of the Carolinas, with their African Hebrew linguistic roots. The Black Hebrew Israelites, who began forming congregations in the early 20th century in Harlem and Chicago. The Rastafarians in Jamaica, who claimed descent from the tribe of Judah through the Solomonic line of Haile Selassie. These were not random ideas. They were recoveries of a stolen lineage. Even today, DNA studies and historical texts continue to raise uncomfortable questions. While mainstream institutions are slow to admit the full implications, independent genetic research has shown connections between African American communities and the Lemba people of Southern Africa, a tribe that has long claimed Jewish ancestry and was found to carry the Cohen modal haplotype, a genetic marker associated with the priestly class of ancient Israel. So what was hidden? It wasn't just history, it was identity. The world wasn't ready to admit that the very people it enslaved were the same people described in ancient scrolls. That the ones picking cotton in Mississippi may have descended from the same lineage as King David. That America's original sin was not only slavery, it was erasing who those slaves really were. The truth is, the story of the tribe of Judah doesn't end in Jerusalem. It continues across the waters in sorrow and strength, in blues and gospel, in marches and memory. It continues in the voices rising from modern Black communities who are rediscovering their ancient names, reclaiming their ancient festivals, and standing once again with the pride of a people who were never truly lost, only hidden.